Well, sales are pretty bad, so you've done a lousy job as salesman, so we're going to have a competition. And the first prize in this competition is this, the Glengarry Leeds, or in this case, the Glengarry Flake. That's the first prize. The second prize is a set of steak knives. Actually, I didn't have any steak knives, so I've got a set of fondue knives. Actually, fondue forks, really, but there we are. Best I could do. And the third prize is you're all fired. Well, that was so badly done, you might not know what I'm going on about. It's not a gore. Actually, I would like to talk about a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross, and that was, I think, an absolute classic movie made in the early 90s. And as I'm smoking now Garwith and Hogarth Glengarry Flake in a Rossi pipe, I couldn't find a Glen Ross pipe, so that's the nearest I can do. I thought it appropriate to talk about this movie because it's one of my very favourite movies, and let's chat about it. Now, I think many of you have probably seen it or remember it, but it wasn't really a blockbuster. It's what I call absolute classic genre type of movie. That means it won't appeal to everybody, but those it does appeal to, they will absolutely love it and never forget it. Well, I will come back to the tobacco and what I think about it. And first, let's talk about this movie. Well, it actually started life as a play that was made in 1984, and it actually won a Pulitzer Prize, and that was from David Mamet. So he was the originator of this story, and it's a kind of genre film in the direction of Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. But it's not at all the same story, but it's kind of in that genre, you know, of that type. And the film is set in Chicago. The director was James Foley, and it took 5-6 years to put this all together, and a lot was invested in the casting, and the casting of this film is genial and unique. You will never see so many class, top-notch actors, Academy Award winners, Oscar winners, or they were nominated, and they're all recognized as top in you know, in many films since they've done then and before. So that's what this makes this film so brilliant. And if you ever worked in a big corporation, or actually if you just worked in sales, you will love this film. Although it's a film noir, it's a kind of sad and slightly dark film, but you'll recognise a lot of the moves and a lot of what's going on. So that makes it, I think, particularly brilliant. And the stars in it were either stars already long before this film, or they were rising stars at that time, or they've become big stars since then. So there are very few films with this kind of cast who are all top notch, and some people, some of the cast were playing quite modest small roles, but so well and so brilliantly that you just have to admire it. So what's the story? The story is, in the 90s, and still are, a lot of real estate companies selling useless land in Florida and swamps or somewhere or other, and it's basically a bit of a con, but Glengarry and Glen Ross were the two projects that they had going on, and there was these mysterious owners of these projects called Mitch and Murray, and they were at the headquarters, and they weren't very happy about the results and sales and how many clients they got to buy into these land projects, Glengarry Glen Ross, and they sent down their wonder boy. Now, if you've been in sales, you get these wonder boys, either it's McKinsey or consultants, or it's some favourite of the headquarters. And it was played by Alec Baldwin. He played the character Blake, and you have to watch. I'll put some clips down if I can find the scenes where he comes and wakes everybody up. So they're all in the office, and he comes in. He's got their sales results, and only one is doing half well. That's our good friend. Our good friend Al Pacino plays Richie Roma. He has the best results, but they're still very unsatisfied with them. And he says we're going to have a competition, and the winner of this competition will win those Glengarry leads. In other words, the names and addresses of really good prospects that someone would find easy to, do a contract with them and make a lot of money out of them. And the second prize is a set of steak knives. Sorry, I didn't have steak knives. And the third is the rest of you just get fired. And I've lived through sales in the 90s. I was in the United States, and it wasn't exactly the same as this story, but you can recognize all of the faces of this film coming along for good and for amusing, but mostly for bad, But I guess the commercial world is like that all over the world, but it was quite classic. Alec Baldwin comes on for, he was in his good-looking best in the early 90s. Putting aside everything in recent times that have come to this misfortune of some of these actors, I won't go into that. Just look at their performance as actors in this scene, and he was absolutely brilliant. He was so dynamic. He was the character 100%, and it's again what made this film excellent is everyone got that character that they were supposed to play perfect, and that's acting, and that's why it made it so brilliant. So he's an arrogant bully. He shows his watch off and he says, "My watch is worth more than your car, and that's why I'm good and you're useless." And so he talks down to them, insults them, and says, "This is the competition, and you've got 2 weeks." So quite a dynamic start to the whole thing. Now the office manager is Kevin Spacey, and he was again a rising star at that point, and pretty well recognised for many of his performances. He was actually a protege of Jack Lemmon, so Jack Lemmon was his mentor, and he was in this film. And he played also a rather background kind of role. He was the office manager, you saw him a lot in scenes. He didn't say that much, but he was obviously, as the dialogue developed, he rather corrupt and distant kind of office manager, not motivating, and basically just returning the fire of insults that he got. He was not respected by this sales team at all, but he wasn't stupid. He was pretty observant, as you'll see as the plot develops. And the big star of this film is Jack Lemmon, and Jack Lemmon plays Shelley the Machine Levine. So he was respected as the old pro of the office, you know, seen it all, done it all, you know, old school, old pro, but he was doing almost the worst of all of them. And he had a lot of personal problems. He had a sick daughter, medical bills to pay, and he didn't have the money. He desperately needed the money, and you know, he probably was about almost 60, getting on and past his best. And again, if you've been in sales and been a sales office, we get the whole spectrum. We get the young upstarts, the sort of middle experienced ones, and the old pros who are getting a little bit out of sync with the times about how things are done. And that's a bit his position. But he was respected by the rest of the team, and he had these real problems. Now, Ed Harris was in this film, and he and Alec Baldwin actually, I don't think, won an Oscar, but have been many times nominated, and they are, you know, Hall of Fame and the Walk of Fame in Hollywood and all the rest, and we all know they're very talented actors. And he played also a kind of smaller role in this, but he played the sort of moaning, opinionated guy in the sales team, big mouth, a bit self-loving. You know, all of these personality profiles you can recognize. You get them in any kind of team, you know, different people, strengths and weaknesses, personalities, but he was that kind of guy. You know, he had a lot of grudge on his, chip on his shoulder. And the other one who's probably furthest in the background in the whole film, Alan Arkin. Now, Alan Arkin is an absolutely superb actor in my view. You remember him from Freebie and the Bean. That was a comedy in the 70s, and Catch 22, where he was brilliant. And he was a star back then. He's maybe at that point a little bit of an aging star, but he's still done brilliant things and is alive today, and has done recent films where he's been totally brilliant. And he played a kind of confused character, you know, a bit puzzled by all of this and not knowing really where to go, and repeated a lot of things that were said to him. And he kind of chummed up with Ed Harris, who played the role of David Moss. Alan Arkin played George Aronow, and he was a kind of a sidekick for Ed Harris's character. And again, you know, you kind of see these, I remember from when I was in the sales team, you know, all these different characters. And of course the Al Pacino was the second star in this film. He got quite a lot of film time, and he played Ricky Roma. And Ricky Roma was a smooth confidence trickster, the sort of person that could sit down, have a drink with you and talk you into something, like buying this useless land. And there was another actor, Jonathan Pryce, who's also been famous, and I think he's also won an Oscar, and you've seen him load of films. He played a rather introvert, weak character that needed the company and liked this smooth, rather seductive chat with Ricky Roma, Al Pacino, and fell into the spider's web in terms of buying some of that land, which turns out later on his wife was dominant and told him, you tear up that contract. That comes later in the plot. But you know, talented actors who became or were rising stars, they accepted to play these rather weak characters or strange characters, Alan Arkin and Jonathan Pryce. They did it so well, and it fitted so well with the other roles that were playing. That's perfect acting. That's why it was gripping to watch what was going to happen in the film. So that's kind of where the story was going, and the film wanders through these characters' interactions that you really get their situation and their character. And Ed Harris playing that character, he wanted to actually rob the office and get those Glengarry leads, you know, which were in a nice box with a bow on them, and steal them. And he tried to talk Alan Arkin into that game. This time the character Alan Arkin played sort of resisted it and didn't want to do it, but you always suspected one of these two must have done, because the robbery went ahead, and Kevin Spacey, the office manager, got the police in, a detective, and the detective went to interview every one of them, which they of course didn't like at all. And there was lots of tremendous dialogue going on all as each one got interviewed, and you always thought this is going to be Ed Harris or Alan Arkin, but that's where you get it wrong. If there is a YouTube version of this, or a rentable version of this, or even a free version of this, I will link it below. In the meantime, Levine has ever more problems, because the hospital says, well, you either pay or your daughter won't get this operation, and she'll have to leave the hospital. And he gets totally desperate and talks with the office boss, Kevin Spacey, to do a deal and offers him 20%, and he actually goes in. So he's obviously a corrupt officer. He's a corrupt manager of the office for sure. But then the robbery comes along and everything falls apart. However, Levine has been working on a deal, and he talks a couple into signing a contract, and he comes into the office all ebullient and saying, you know, I'm the old pro, I did it the right way, insults Kevin Spacey as the office manager, and thinks he's won the competition and everything is fine. Al Pacino thought he would win it, but then, as I said, his client came in and said, I have to tear this contract up. It turns out the contract was sent off and processed, and the check with it, and so he storms out of the office, and will find a way to cancel the check, probably. So that's Al Pacino thinking, oh God, that's gone down the drain. And of course, Jack Lemmon is spouting out, he's on top of the world, but he says something that gives him away, that he knew that check I was talking about was on the table, and the office manager, Kevin Spacey, says, well, you could have only known that if you were in the office after I left and locked up, which means you must have done the burglary. And then that terrible moment when Jack Lemmon realizes everything is falling apart, and he also finds out that the couple that he sold the land to are crazy and they would sign anything and they're bankrupt, and it would be invalidated, so it was worthless. And you could just see his world collapsing. He realizes he can't do anything, and he is the last to be interviewed by the detective, and that's really how the film ends, that his world has gone. He's a broken man, he will go to prison, and it's rather strange ending, but you see the reality, the bitter reality of commercial life, that the salesman slowly got on the phone, so Alan Arkin and then Al Pacino, and thought, well, you know, I'll try another customer to do another deal. And that's rather sad how it is, you know, in if somebody is getting fired or has to leave his desk, business has to go on, and very, very quickly people just go into the next phase and carry on. But that's what they have to do. They have to earn their money and put food on the table. And in a company like this, you know, you're at the low end of any kind of ethical selling. You know, you end up in companies like that if things go very wrong for you. And it's so in that sense it's rather a sad film, but it's still rather gripping because of the performances. And just like Death of a Salesman is a rather sad book from Arthur Miller, but you see a lot of real life in that. So do watch it if you haven't seen it, and I'm pretty sure I found it actually on YouTube, and you can rent it for like, I don't know, $3 or $4 or something like that. Let's go on to the Glengarry Flake, shall we, and talk about that, because I saw Gareth and Hogarth got another load of their products over to smokingpipes.com, and you get really good prices and fantastic shipping, and I was pretty sure I would like it because Tobacco Reviews gave it 3.0, and it's an aromatic and it's a flake, so it's a good start. It's pure Virginia. Have to be careful because of tongue bite, things like that, but I read the reviews from Jim Inks and Stevie B, and everyone said there's not really tongue bite to find here if you're just smoking it normally, and I'm delighted with it actually. So everybody says, yeah, there's Lakeland in it. Some say it's strong and others say it's about medium Lakeland, so you have to like Lakeland for sure, which I do. And there's a topping which is kind of all, you know, smokingpipes.com and also Tobacco Reviews said it's like, you know, alcohol, whiskey, you know, got one of these long lists of Irish mist, you know, in other words, they don't know what it is. And the reviewers said that adds some sweetness to it, but weren't really identifying what it was. I pick out it's some kind of liqueur, some kind of alcohol, and yeah, it intensifies the sweetness, which is, for me, it's good. I like a medium, mild sweetness, sometimes a bit more, but this is just perfectly pitched for me. So Jim Inks said you pick up the Virginia, it's a little bit sublimated by the toppings and the Lakeland, but you still pick up this earthy, woody, a bit of grass and hay from the Virginia, Stevie B said, yeah, you know, but the Virginia is a bit in the background, not a spectacular Virginia, but smokes cool and slowly, as a flake would, and it's a reasonably moist flake. So I took that box, which had a little plastic tray with a sealed cellophane on top, and I put it in 3 jars like this. It's a lot more than I thought, and it looks really nice. And you get the Lakeland straight away, that floral sort of grandma's perfume. And they're beautiful flakes, very soft, easily breaking apart, and quite moist. You could dry it a little bit if you want, sort of 15-20 minutes or something like that, if you prefer a bit a drier smoke. But if you don't mind just the odd relight, you could smoke it straight how it comes. So I'm very pleased that I got that big quantity, because I think you could practically smoke this all day if you wanted. It's, as I said, it's amazingly inexpensive buying in bulk from smokingpipes.com. So it's I think something I'm going to enjoy. It's based on Virginia, so it means it'll age well, and probably for the next 10 years I've got some of this in those 3 jars. Let's see how quickly I go through this one. But very, very nice, not overpowering in the flavors, just really in the right position, in that lovely medium phase. So I can recommend it, and I recommend if you have the chance to look at that classic film, try it out. It's really, really entertaining, especially if you've been in the commercial world, and especially in the 90s. You'll recognize so many things about this film with this fantastic cast. That's it for today. I'm back in the shed of serenity now, and my wife has got visitors, so I'm in the doghouse, so to say, but it means I had a chance to do this video. Take care, everyone. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.